press briefing as part of our bi-weekly updates on the reform implementation in Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that when new government appears, there will be more briefings on reforms. I'm sure that we will see the new government which will be able to implement reforms which are needed for the country in the shortest possible time. Now, about what was happening in the last 2 weeks. As to Strategy 2020, it's published on a website. It's the final version with all the indicators and so on. We are now negotiating with several international donors and companies as to financial support of the development of the comprehensive system of KPIs for the Strategy 2020, and that is a serious approach which we would like to start in Ukraine. There is a similar thing in Germany and Britain, in the United Arab Emirates. You can all see how that is done in these countries. Now, the project which at the tactical level is important, and also at, but I will say a few words back, words on the operational level. The donor conference is of importance. The Cabinet of Ministers has is working on the plan of reforms 2015-2017. The new government will complete this work. That is important because the plan of renewal of the country, which was developed by many institutions, is very important for the country. The European community got involved into that, and they want to see the continuation of the project, which has to finish or will become the plan for the government, and which will be presented at the donor conference at the first quarter of 2015. Now, tactical level. During the last 2 weeks, we had such an important process which was initiated by the National Council of Reforms. It addressed the Renaissance Foundation with the request to expand the funding for some of its initiatives. We are working a lot with the Renaissance Foundation on creating the advisory councils, the UCMC, the team of the advisors, and so on. And the idea which was developed is to address the global recruiting agencies so that they find the personnel which could be involved into the work in the government, in the ministries. Maybe they will be heading some state-owned companies to find the pool of people who are Ukrainians or who are of Ukrainian origin but have the foreign citizenship, those who are ready to work in Ukraine. And it's interesting that we addressed 3 agencies, recruiting agencies, and there are examples in the world of attracting specialists from business, using recruiting agencies to look for specialists for public administration. So that was the case in Italy after the government of Berlusconi. They were looking for the candidates to some ministers, to the Ministry of Finance, to state-owned companies. There are examples in the U.S. where recruiting agencies are looking for specialists for different positions in the government and different state organizations and the institutions. In Britain also there is such an example where they attract professionals to find people for the different institutions, also in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. The companies that we addressed They also do their own assessment for European Commission, for example. There are many European commissioners who are assessed every year. And because the recruiting agencies are independent and they have a wonderful methodology and professionals who are allowed to assess the candidates or the workers with high quality. So we addressed Hudson, Peterson, and Peterson company, Peterson Partners, and we partners. The companies were very much interested in such work. This is a lot of work. We had 185 candidates, and for 2 weeks they had to assess them. We gave them very clear criteria because there were many questions asked by mass media. What were the criteria? The ability to act in conditions of indefinite situation, the ability to make quick decisions, the ability to manage comprehensive structures, to be result-oriented, the ability to cooperate with the colleagues, interact with the colleagues, not just to manage the organization from top to down, but build also the horizontal links, but also manage up, to work in a more difficult situation, environment where you have to achieve consensus or achieve result, to convince colleagues, to motivate other people, to involve people, to organize work, to support the values and objectives, such qualities as patriotism. And that was a separate requirement because the person should see Ukraine as the country where which the person values, where the person works. We have many stories out of these candidates who were either Ukrainians who went to the US or Britain or Canada, and with some time they achieved high positions in international organizations, but they also got the citizenship of other countries, and they have a wonderful experience now, and they are well looking at these opportunities. It is important, and I can talk from my own experience. These people probably would be ready, even mentally, to go to work to the public administration, but they are not convinced that they are needed. They do not know, they are not ready to talk about that publicly. The recruiting companies are the agencies which have a trustworthy relations with the heads of the companies and the institutions. And that is why we came up with the idea to invite companies which would help us find people who are mentally ready and financially ready, and they want to change the country. They have the funds, but they are not on the radar of any institution or any political party. Also, the professional requirements were experience of implementing changes in organizations or in business, which led to serious increase of indicators. The experience in reformatting organizations, certain crisis management, the experience of work minimum in 2 companies, and also reputation, motivation. We were looking at the total number of people that person was managing. If a person was working in business, what was this person developing? Also to have a quality of out-of-the-box thinking. Also transparent and clear career, because sometimes the careers are not clear and not transparent. Like you do not understand why there were certain intervals in the career, and also the readiness to be working in the public sector, because the person should understand that the person agrees to work in the public sector. For that, you need to understand what it is. There is a certain maybe there should be a very clear understanding of what is this public administration machine in the country, and also the desire to make the contribution into development of the country. We had 185 candidates. In the process of interviews, we selected 24. 24 were selected. These materials were given to the National Council of Reforms, and it shared that with the political forces. And this is now the decision of the coalition of political forces as to these people. It is very important to emphasize that, because I saw many speculations, but that is not the influence, not the pressure. It was the opportunity to see that there are people who are ready to change the country. They have great experience and they are ready. That is it. That was the idea which was implemented. How it will be implemented now in the decision in the coalition during the voting in Verkhovna Rada, I do not know, but I believe that we've made a very important step, and we understand that's not the end. There is a task to reformat most of the public bodies. We need to find people who will be oriented to do so that the state-owned company earns money for the state, so that these people increase the capitalization of these companies. And that is one of the experiments, and I believe it's quite interesting. The reaction of the society is interesting, and I would like to emphasize that recruiters were looking not just for foreigners, but for Ukrainian leaders, entrepreneurs who have Ukrainian citizenship but work abroad. And as to the status of some of the reforms,
first of all, this was the electronic public procurement system. On December 5th, we will launch this project. By December 12th, we will have the electronic test version ready, and on December 15th, we will start testing. We have involved Kiev City administration and Energatom to this tests, and we have a team of experts who will check how the system will work in course of this test launch. On December 1st, in Ukrinform, there was a press conference delivered by Konstantin Vashchenko why Ukraine needs a new law on civil service. It was developed by jointly by experts of RPR, a new country, and it was checked and reviewed by the experts of Sigma. Also, and you can see this draft law on the website Reforms in UA. In the section Initiatives, you will find several bills which are in the pipeline of experts. They develop now electronic signature legislation, public procurement system, the draft law on civil service, etc. It is possible not just review those bills, but also provide your background, your feedback. Besides this, in Ukrainian Crisis Media Center on December 1st, there was a very interesting press conference about new rules and regulations for the Cabinet of Ministers, a package of the draft laws, which was developed by the reanimation package of reforms, was presented because the ability of the Cabinet of Ministers to reform the country is very important for the future. As soon as we will have the new Cabinet of Ministers, we will immediately resume the work of the National Reforms Council, because the council membership consists of the representatives of the Cabinet of Ministers, Verkhovna Rada, civil society representatives now. And as soon as we have representatives from the Cabinet of Ministers, we'll be able to finalize the process of National Reform Council membership. And we have prepared the list of issues for top priority review by the National Reform Council, and we are very eager to pass some issues, probably to change the structure of the Executive Committee of Reforms, and to suggest somebody from the Cabinet of Ministers to this structure. As of the moment, I believe these are all updates. I mentioned that we have all these materials in our website. Very favorite topic about 3G. Yesterday, we have seen the agreement provided by the Cabinet of Ministers about auction of 3G, which is scheduled for December 9th. National Committee on Communications has to issue a special decision, establish auction commission, and in 2 months, on December 9th, they will announce this tender. And within 2 months, we will have it finished, and we will see the winners of these tenders. And probably in summer, in some places, we will have 3G already. I believe that press briefing which we had here in the UCMC on Friday, it also promoted Wall Street Journal. First of all, I congratulate you with 3G. I'm very happy. We still need to have the committee session devoted to this, but I believe we have passed all the blockers as of today. Dmitry, how would you assess, with what mark would you assess your work and the work of all your colleagues from the government during last 9 months? I would put F mark. You described many things, the experts, the coalition, etc. Could you suggest why we still should have optimism about reforms? Let us hope that government will be approved today, finally, and can we expect that this new government will move quickly and could be a source of optimism? Because I know much skepticism about the leadership of the country. Thank you for your question. I'm very much eager to see in the new government, the government of reformers, and that's why we did our best to present reformers there. But these are politicians who make decisions. But I believe that it is very important to be honest in terms of what's going on in the country, what's happening in the country in terms of economy. We should be honest when we present our work during last 8 months. we should speak openly to the society what were our successes, where we failed, and why we failed. I believe that such honest approach would allow us to speed up reforms. Today, our approach should be like at the appointment with a doctor. When the doctor says you need an urgent surgery, and the issue about raising gas prices, gas tariffs, cuts down in bureaucracy, state machinery. This has been being discussed for years. I believe that we have long lists of tasks which should be carried out in Ukraine. This should be done by somebody, but it should be done today by those who have mandate, who have responsibility. That is by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. The Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine is able to change its directives or directives issued by Azarov. Cabinet of Ministers can speed up deregulation actually in all spheres. Cabinet of Ministers is able to create favorable conditions for entrepreneurs, especially for entrepreneurs from Europe, to prevent that flow of claims and which I receive every day. Unpaid VAT, unreturned VAT amounts to 8 billion hryvnia. Actually, this allowed the state budget to get 8 billion hryvnia additionally, but this is actually on the account of business, which paid taxes for the future period. Under conditions of military confrontation and aggression of Russia, of course, we should keep in mind all those things, but we should be honest and honestly report what we managed to, to do and what we failed to do. If this government fails to move forward, then we will have the next government, which still will need to go forward. I believe that now we should provide all possible assistance to this new government to be able to act efficiently. About cut off in government expenditures. Establishing the Ministry of Information, how this corresponds to the cut down in government expenses. Maybe it's possible just to have one publication in Wall Street Journal and that's it. We had several publications in the international printed media, and next, of course, and we still lack this representation. Next week, I will speak in one of the London's conferences about preconditions for investments. But we should keep in mind that we should stack with what we promise or what we say and what we do. The latest events and in regulating airline business, and some other steps made by the government recently, they promote conditions for just some companies For example, I recently received a complaint from an airline company, which is now pushed out from Borispil Airport. That is, we should prevent negative stories because having this factual negative stories against what we are writing in the newspapers won't be for the good of the country. I discussed this with the president several times, and I believe that very soon we will have National Investments Council, and this council will deal with the business climate issue. Also, I'm very happy that now we have position of the business ombudsman, which also will be for the favor of business climate. As for reorganization of the bureaucracy, that is, we cannot increase numbers of civil servants. That is, when we are establishing some new government body, we should cut down some other government bodies. And we should say openly that the country do not earn enough to maintain all these governmental bodies. Since we do not earn enough to maintain this bureaucracy, we have to cut it down by the moment when it will be able to do this. This does not mean that we can make pressure on business to be able to maintain all this bureaucracy. That is, when we feel that we are able to earn enough for all these bureaucrats, we will then enlarge it. Yeah.
Could you please tell, the Law and Anti-Corruption Bureau will, on the 15th of December, become effective? What has been done already? What are the candidates for the position of the head? I will not be able to tell you about the candidates. I can tell you that there is a team that's working. There are interesting experts who are working on that. There's the law, and then there is implementation of the law. What should this bureau look like? How it should operate? Then the process are to be started. For that, we need the government. We need that there should be 3 representatives of the president, 3 from the government. The government should be created and united, 3 representatives from Verkhovna Rada, which will be announcing the competition for the future head of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. Now, all politicians' attention is focused on forming the government. As soon as we finish this process, the process with the Anti-Corruption Bureau will start. But they're working. They understand what should be happening. Then there's one thing that is the law, and another one is the institution. My question is about civil service, Ukrinform. Could you please tell, the law which will be voted for, hopefully, cancels the preferences for civil servants and also changes the salaries. How will you be attracting civil service for these small salaries? I believe we first have to increase the salaries, and for that we need certain transitional period. We need to even to increase the salary. There's understanding there is a draft law on accounting chamber where we have to reduce the number of civil servants. We need to look at the functions of civil servants. If we reduce the institutions, we will reduce the functions of the civil servants as well. When we are talking about salary, wages, I'm sure that if we reduce it and if we leave the wages fund the same, we'll reduce the number of people, but leave the wages fund the same, then we will be able to increase the wages for civil servants, but that will be just the first stage. But then later we have an idea of creating a special fund which will be able to pay additional money to those people who will work in civil service. If we look at the number of civil servants who work in state-owned companies, that's very disproportional compared with Europe. We have too many state-owned companies, which means that we need to do privatization. The state-owned companies, if they earn money, they can pay money to their employees, but if the state-owned company is taken care by the professionals, and if this is done transparently, when every state-owned company should publish their reports non-stop, that would be normal. When the activity of the companies is absolutely transparent, when there is annual audit for that company, just like that is done by international companies, and then the efficiency of state-owned companies will increase. And we also need to transfer them from subordination to the ministries. They are to be turned into holding, and our task is to increase the salaries of civil servants so that it is similar or even higher than the average market salary. So we need to differentiate between political appointees and civil servants. And if this is done, then we will have a category of civil servants who will be motivated. There has been recently an article in Harvard Business Review about motivation of civil servants. It's quite interesting. It's not just us who have these difficulties with understanding what should be motivation for civil servants. First the remark and then the question. The Ministry of Healthcare, the Ministry of Economic Development, Fiscal Service, all these bodies were famous because there were several scandals there, because the minister or the leader of the ministry wasn't able to influence the deputies. But the new managers will be inserted into the paradigm of the existing system. Will they really get the powers for implementing reforms? Because there's the risk that this will be the same situation as in the past. On the 1st of December, there was this presentation of how the new cabinet of ministers should be operating. We need to change the model for the cabinet of ministers urgently. I mean the structure of administration, because now the deputies are appointed by the cabinet of ministers, and the minister is responsible for the vertical, but the minister has certain limitations. So it would be good if the ministers have powers, because they have political responsibility. But their instruments are taken away from them by legislation. From the point of view of management, it's better to create the function of control than taking away this instrument of managing. So it's better to give powers to ministers. But before that, law is approved. In which environment will these ministers work? It will be very difficult for them. But I hope we need to understand that that is our country, and we need to put all the efforts, and I address everyone who hears. We have no right to just observe how someone is working, and we just see whether the person fails or not. We need to help. That's important because this is our country. And to expect that someone will do it or let's wait till someone fails is wrong. We need to put all the efforts. I will be doing it personally so that this government, this prime minister achieve positive results. Any more questions? Once we have no more questions, thank you, Dmytro, and hopefully see you in 2 weeks or earlier. Thank you.